This evening we'll do evening chanting in English, page 19. And there's a few dedications. Branch has to be cut down, so well-wishing for all those little beings that might be in there. And for Kyle Stigard, who is and for Lisa, friend of Carol Melkonian, who passed away suddenly.
bestows blessings on me. To the Dhamma I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion I will walk this excellent way of truth. For me there is no other refuge. The Dhamma is my excellent refuge. By the utterance of the Dhamma and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
Now let's chant the recollection of the Sangha.
They are the who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the four pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts, worthy of for incomparable goodness to arise in the world.
Now let's chant the supreme praise of the Sangha.
Born of the Dhamma, that Sangha which has practiced well, the field of the Sangha formed of 8 kinds of noble virtue. I revere that assembly of noble beings, perfected in purity, the Sangha which is the supreme, secure refuge of all beings, as the third object of recollection. The Sangha is my Lord and guide, the Sangha is sorrow's destroyer, and it bestows blessings on me. To the Sangha I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion I will walk the well-practiced way of the Sangha. For by the utterance of this truth, may I grow in the Master's way. By my devotion to the Sangha and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute bio break and come back for the Dhamma Talk.
1, 2.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, I've got lots of thumbs up. All right, very good. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ namasami. Okay, November 25th, 2020. Wednesday night, Abhayagiri Buddhist Monastery. Online Thanksgiving theme and contemplating a certain vocabulary word. Aryatangika Magga, the Noble Eightfold Path, or the Arya Satya, like the Noble Truths. So this word Arya or noble is an interesting word, interesting to contemplate. Noble virtue, noble behavior, that it's actually noble to live a virtuous life of high integrity. It's noble to keep the precepts, and it's noble to, and in particular the Thai forest tradition, this idea of humility, being humble, patient endurance, a good solid focus on proper conduct. And it's not easy. These things highlight things in the mind, places in the mind we don't normally see. That's the whole reason for the precepts, or at least one of the main reasons for holding precepts. So it's very common for people who haven't held precepts before or who aren't that familiar with holding precepts have increased when one undertakes the precepts, or when one starts meditating, that the defilements get worse, which most certainly isn't the case. It's just that we're seeing that was already there, but it was hidden because we were acting out on it. We were going out, we weren't going in. So not to lose heart or be dismayed if the mind is one of the noble precepts, like an example of this, the brahmacharya, the celibacy, and that's going to highlight lust in the mind. That's totally normal. This is and something like this is going to be experienced when we take on something like celibacy. Our particular tradition, you could actually say that it's likely that it's of any religious tradition or order in the world, we're one of the strict sexuality in this tradition, or very few anyway. And so those precepts, the monastic precepts, the 8 precepts, the 3rd precept in particular, really limits us in terms of that, and thus it gets highlighted in the mind. And so that's where we learn about these practices of like the asubha kamata. And I just say this now just because it's so important, and it's just ordinary and to be expected that these things will come up into the mind when one undertakes the precepts, in particular the precepts of celibacy And so it's difficult. The precepts highlight the craving, dukkha. So the practice, the Dhamma practice then is to, rather than work to fulfill the craving in order to get rid of the dukkha, we're looking at the dukkha and the craving directly it and trying to see, is there a way that the craving can be relinquished and thus the dukkha dealt with in a different way and perhaps a much more dealt with in a much deeper way. So this is very important. Noble truth of dukkha. So it's noble to look at things in this way. See what's going on there in the mind. Or we can at least see our own actions and work to pure in the heart. But we're learning we're reframing our experience in terms of the Four Noble Truths in order to deal with this problem of dukkha, this very deep. It's causing problems, so we need to get it out and we need to apply strong medicine, and the strong medicine is the precepts, and that medicine stings. It's painful, but it's good. It's the process of healing, and so at first anyway, it's difficult. Anybody who comes to the story of the Buddha, and we might be inspired and say like, yes, I can do that. And then we come to the monastery and we take on the precepts, and then we find we might end up dismayed about what we see. Bliss and being hit by a lightning bolt of wisdom and enlightenment, and living out my life peacefully in the forest without problems, happy. Takes a lifetime of work, I guess. A lifetime of effort just to experience peace and well-being. It's better to put the work in now and deal with it. But it takes work. Longpo Pasano telling a story about how he felt when he first went to Wat Pah Pong, and I could be getting this wrong a little bit, but the story goes something. Master Longpo Cha, and deciding to stay at Wat Pah Pong, and then having all this vigor and inspiration to persevere in the practice, and then he got me all inspired and just like he reeled me in, he got me, and now it's like, oh my God, like this is just going to be like years like of a long slog of practice, and this is going to take some work. But I mean, yeah, now he's Longpa, so it's worth it. Life stories of the Buddha. So from time to time, he was known to talk about his past lives and his cultivation of Tibetan version. I'm not quite sure where it is in the Pali Jatakas, but the Tibetan version of the story, it's related, and it also, the source is the same. It comes originally from the Pali, but it deals with a certain verse, and the verse goes something like this. my mind is tormented by this. Now I will turn my mind to the Dhamma. And so this particular verse comes from the story of Prince Chanda, the virtuous prince. And so at this time, there's also a problem. Huge, like, barbarian named Sada Parudita, and he's known for capturing people and eating them, and he subsists on eating. And he especially loves princes, so he goes around to these different places capturing princes, and he really wants to get that one. And so the virtuous prince, Prince Chanda, hears about this ogre of a man, and his ministers are like, "Are you?" He's out with it. The prince is out, and then he sees this army. He sees his army coming in the other direction, and they're fleeing from this guy. And the guy is chasing them, and so, like, the army's running. Sadhuparadita sees Prince Chanda and says, "It's you I want." And earlier that day, it just so happened that Prince Chanda, he would go and see different ascetics and Brahmins from time to time and receive teachings from them. So he had gone to see a certain Brahmin priest. And so Sadhuparadita takes Prince Chanda back to his lair, and there's the scene is really horrific. There's bones everywhere, and jackals screaming, and bats, and vultures, and then there's these horrified other princes who are still, like, haven't been eaten yet, but they're shaking and terrified, and they're barbarian. He puts the prince down and sets him down off to the side, and he's like, "You're not fighting back. Like, what's the deal?" And the prince doesn't say anything. And then the prince remembers he forgot to give an offering to this. And so the barbarian says, "Why are you crying? I know it's because you're afraid of death." And the prince says, "No, it's because I got some teachings from this Brahmin earlier today, and I forgot to give him." Be crying because of that. And then he says, "Well, the truth to me is more valuable to me than my own life, and is unheard of, and I'm willing to test you about this." And he's like, I'll let you go and give the offering to this Brahmin if you promise to come back, and then I can eat you." And he says, "Yes, I'm happy to die if I've given this offering." And as you say you are in terms of your commitment to truth, you'll come back. And so Prince Chanda leaves, goes back to his palace. Everybody's amazed. They don't know how he got away. And they're like, "Well, what? You're going to go back?" And he said, "Yes, I just need to give an offering to this Brahmin, and then I'm going to go back, and then he's going to eat me." Like, who would go back after being released from certain death? And so he then he gets, like, 4,000 gold pieces or something, and goes and offers it all to this Brahmin who gave him this teaching. And then he goes back, and this is totally unheard of, and already Sadhuparadita is having doubts about his eating this guy, but he's saying, like, this is totally unheard of, like, and then the prince says, "Okay, I'm back." the fire is smoking. It'll ruin the taste. I have to wait for a little while. In the meantime, tell me what this Brahmin taught you that was so important that you needed to go give this offering. And so then Prince Chanda says, I can't teach you because people like you aren't vessels for the Dhamma. You kill and eat people, and and then the barbarian starts to have this he's starting to vacillate and have these doubts, and he says, well, you princes kill deer with your bows. Anything any ordinary hunter would do, and your actions, you have no idea what the result of your actions would be. It's like so horrible, I can't even tell. And then it goes something like, a noble being is rare in the world, and to meet such a noble being is of great benefit. You only need to see them once, and they will make you steadfast. And that was the verse he was taught. And so then, like, Saddhoparadita is crying, and he bows to the prince, and he says, like, basically, take me as your disciple, and takes the 5 precepts from the prince, and then he releases all the other princes and becomes this Dhamma protector. And so this is a story that illustrates a couple things. One is that a bad person changing into a good person. And it's also based on the example of the prince with his commitment to truth, even in the face of certain death, and his commitment to truth, which eventually saved his life through that commitment. And teaching stories, and so they illustrate certain things. And I do have, for myself, I have faith that a commitment to truth to that level can have power like that. Like, how powerful is that? And that's something that comes from this word, contemplating this word noble, and the Dhamma practice. It becomes very powerful when we relate to it intentions. It's also one of the positives of the law of impermanence, in that a bad person can change into a good one. Nothing's fixed. And there's another story of it occurred in the time of the Buddha, so it's a bit more, can be a bit more applicable, and it's kind of similar. According to the commentaries, Angulimala, his name originally was Ahingsaka, and which means harmless one, and priest teacher of his growing up that he could, say, deliver people from suffering through killing them, and there's a sense maybe the teacher needed to discredit him as well, and so like the assignment was to kill 1,000 people, and to count them, he cut their fingers off and wore them as a necklace, and so he had this. Mala means mala, necklace, or mala, and so like a mala made of fingers, and so this gruesome, horrific thing that he's doing based on his wrong views. And again, Mala was in, and there's the Angulimala Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, and it's a very good sutta if anybody wants to check it out, and it goes through the story of Angulimala, and it says in the sutta, there was the bandit Angulimala, and groups of 5 men, 10 men, 20 men, 30 men, even 40 men couldn't face him, couldn't defeat him. And so he was this greatly feared, like, barbarian murderer. And so the Buddha is in the and they say, Bhante, don't go down this road. The bandit Angulimala is down this road. Like, we're running away. And so the Buddha just quietly keeps walking, and second time, a third time, people pass him and tell him, and the Buddha just doesn't respond. He just keeps walking. And so I think this part might be commentarial, where Angulimala had killed 999 people and the Buddha sort of intercepted him, and so Angulimala sees the Buddha, of course, and says, basically, I'm gonna kill this ascetic, and perfect timing. And so the Buddha turns around, and he has a kind of a strange Mala running as fast as he can't catch him. And so Angulimala is running after the Buddha, and he starts getting tired, and he's like, stop, stop, stop. And the Buddha just says, I have stopped. When are you going to stop? And then Angulimala just immediately, right then and there, has a change of heart and falls on the ground. You're going and you say, you've stopped. I've stopped, and you say, I'm not stopping. What type of stopping do you refer to? And then the Buddha gives this long set of verses, but it starts by saying, I've stopped forever. So he says, I'm the one who's stopped forever. And the kind of stopping, Angulimala asks for the ordination, and then you got he gets the ehi bhikkhu, the come bhikkhu ordination, where that is his ordination. And then he's, right then and there, he's a bhikkhu. And so some time passes, and Angulimala is practicing, and I can't quite remember when he attains arhatship, but it's not that long. And at this time he's still like living quite close to the Buddha in this particular region. Act on alms round, and beaten almost to the point of death, and his bowl is broken, and he crawls back to the place where the Buddha is, and the Buddha just says, bear it, Brahmin. You're receiving the results. And then sometime, perhaps later after that, maybe after he's healed, King Pasenadi hears that Angulimala has, King Pasenadi, he goes to the Buddha, and he also is aware that Angulimala's in the Buddha about, you should be careful, like there's this horrible bandit. And the Buddha's like, well, what if I told you he became a bhikkhu? How would you react? And King Pasenadi says, well, I don't believe that to be. And then the Buddha says, well, he's here. And then he calls him over. And in the sutta, King Pasenadi's hair is standing on end when he sees him. King Pasenadi knows, oh, this really is Angulimala. And then the king says, this is unbelievable. I would like to offer you a robe. He wants to offer a robe to Angulimala. And then Angulimala says, wearing only cast-off cloth, and so I can't accept your offering. And then the king's faith goes even higher and says, like, this is like Angulimala was a rag robe where he was a Dutanga monk. Just kind of painting a picture. And that's yet another example of someone who we would normally think of as totally irredeemable and becomes a bhikkhu and becomes noble in his actions. There's another story, there's a particular Paritta chant we do called the Angulimala protection. And the story behind this one is Angulimala is on alms round one day, and he notices something, and he's contemplating it, and he goes back and tells the Buddha about it, and the Buddha says, go back there right now and go and tell that, by the power of this truth, may you have a good birth. And Angulimala says, well, how could I possibly say that? I would be lying. And then the Buddha says, well, when I say birth, I mean your noble birth. I mean your birth into the robes. The Paritta is very short. It starts off at Yato hang bhagini ariyaya jatiya jato. So it's like, since I've taken birth, since I've taken the noble birth, I have never, after that goes well for this person. And so then to this day we do this chant for like expectant mothers. It's quite an interesting one. In order to turn the mind to the Dhamma, and then that kind of integrated approach to, say, like reforming ourselves, reforming our life to be in accord with Dhamma, then that comes into the practice, into the meditation, into the process of the mind and the heart starting to settle. Possible to change, to flip, and it's a very important realization. Nothing is fixed. Nothing and nobody is fixed. So coming back, maybe circling back around to the precepts and the experience of holding the precepts and what this can bring up in the mind. The 8 precepts, the Renunciate, the refraining from entertainment, beautification, and adornment, and the refraining from high and luxurious sleeping places. And Ajahn Ñāṇiko alluded to this before, that these are not moral precepts, but they're renunciate precepts, and so they're more for like see the heart a bit more clearly, and but at the same time those can be difficult too, and this kind of contemplative lifestyle where you live in a very simple and basic way, just with the basic requisites for life. Although we have Abhayagiri, we've got really good facilities here. There was always enough food, but you wouldn't have very good food sometimes. Like when I was cooking, sometimes it was like, I mean, I was a good cook, but like beans or something. And so like that was the meal. So that's it was called the Mouse House, and it was really horrible. I almost had a refrigerator, a washer, a dryer, and shelves, and squirrels would get in and eat the bottoms of the soy milks, and they would pour onto the carpeted floor. And this was the food shed. this was the food pantry. Do you remember that? Oh, the woodpeckers. This was like a detached bedroom from the original bungalow that was here, and there was no insulation in the walls, and the woodpeckers had been pecking for probably decades on the outside of this like siding, and they would drop their acorns in and they would fall to the bottom, and so the entire walls were insulated with acorns. Out, it almost like a cartoon. It's like spilled out with just acorns, and the whole place was just full of acorns. And I think we had probably like a truckload of acorns. Actually, it was a lot. So where was I? Requisites for life. Yeah, we're just. So that's where we kept our food requisites. But I think where I was going with this was, living simply. That's the Renunciate precepts. Another Alcatraz one time. I think he'd never been there, and there was some sort of like instructional video that you can watch when you're there, and so we did this chant on the other day of the 4 requisites, and so this informational video that you watch when you're in Alcatraz, it was talking about the privations of the prisoners that lived there, and they said they had only the barest minimum for life. All they had was clothing, food, shelter, and medicine. We're not in a prison. We're not living in Alcatraz, but we are living with just these basic 4 requisites, and just what's needed in the ordination, in the formal bhikkhu ordination. These 4 requisites are talked about as far as the bare minimum you should be happy with, like Angulimala, the cast-off cloth from a refuse heap, the pangsukala chivarani, the cast-off cloth robes. But if you get offered robes or nicer cloth, these are allowable. Scraps of food, scraps of alms food, but if you get offered meal invitations or nicer things, these are allowable as well. For a dwelling place, you should be happy with, content with the foot of a tree place. You are allowed to use that, and also we're rule bound. Actually, later on, it became you actually have to have a dwelling place during the vasa, during the rains retreat period. Bare minimum, you're supposed to be happy with urine as medicine. But if you get offered, honey, ghee, drinks, other medicines, these are fine too, but you're supposed to be happy with urine as medicine. And what that does is, when we live in this way, it really highlights what's in the mind. It highlights the obstructions, the deeper tendencies, what we call the anusaya, the latencies, the latent tendencies deep in the mind. And we start to be able to deal with reflection this evening.
Angulimala Dhammakataya Sadhuka.
And I have an announcement about tomorrow, also an important announcement, that there will be because it's Thanksgiving, so people might have various plans or not. Dhamma Talk, we were realizing that with Zoom, we can actually have a guest speaker. So tomorrow evening, Ajahn Ñāṇiko has agreed to give the Dhamma Talk, and that will be the same time, 8 p.m., but I just wanted to give people a heads up in case you were thinking of missing. Not sure caveat, but hopefully it works and we get to pay respects to and listen to Ajahn Ñāṇiko tomorrow evening. And we'll
Now let us chant the verses of share and aspiration.
Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my Father and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss, and realize the deathless. Through may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all